Good evening and a very warm welcome to English News Package with radio and television Tonga News for tonight. Looking at tonight's stories. Few COVID-19 cases recorded as Tonga is facing its third wave of COVID-19. Health Director urges people to be more cautious with food and the weather during the festive season, and Australia announced $73 million aid to Tonga this year alone. These and more stories later on in this bulletin. Now for the stories in detail. Tonga is now facing its third wave, but no new restrictions are imposed. This follows 12 people who have been confirmed to be positive COVID-19 from Omicron variant.
The Health Director, Dr. Nuku'alofa, says these 12 people were outpatients at Viola Hospital who were sick from coughing and fever and were tested and confirmed to have COVID-19. Dr. Nuku'alofa says that these are normal tests carried out to every patient visiting the hospital, as there are procedures in place from COVID-19. He says that Tonga now records its third wave from COVID-19, but is mild compared to the first wave. The first wave was in the first 3 months of the year, the second recorded in the middle of the year with no cases, and now few cases have emerged in the third wave, and borders opening up attribute to this. As of now, New Zealand and Australia are also recording the second wave from the virus with normal restrictions in place. The 12 positive cases of COVID-19 are in Viola Hospital, with some in home isolation, as none of them are in critical condition from the virus. Dr. Nuku'alofa says it is time Tonga learns to live with COVID-19, as they are treating COVID-19 patients similar to those sick from the flu. He adds because of the mildness of the third wave, there is no need for new restrictions, but for people to adhere to the restrictions they had in the first wave. As such, there will be no curfew imposed or restriction on movements inland. However, Dr. Nuku'alofa reminds people of the significance of vaccines and urges those who are yet to get vaccinated, especially booster shots, to do so. The concern is because it is the only best way to protect oneself from COVID-19. Reporting for Radio and Television Tonga News, I'm Alice Tupo.
Tonga will receive $73 million aid this year from Australia as part of the assistance. From June, 3 Australian ministers have visited Tonga to re-emphasise partnership and to empower strong relationships between the two countries. Australia's Minister for International Development and the Pacific, Honourable Pat Conroy, says with the multi-million-dollar assistance, there's an addition for budget support, and other part of the assistance is in kind.
This year alone we'll be providing $73 million of foreign aid, $30 million in budget support that I signed yesterday, $43 million of other forms of aid. But importantly, that's just one part of our relationship with the Pacific that really supports all our countries. The Pacific Labour Scheme is generating about $400 million of remittances back to the Pacific each year. Our support for maritime security through anti-piracy patrols, anti-fishing, poaching patrols, our defence cooperation with His Majesty's Armed Forces is another example, as is our Indo-Pacific broadcasting strategy to support Pacific journalism. All of this is designed to really empower the Pacific and act on the priorities of the Pacific family.
With the recent visits of Australian ministers to Tonga, they kept highlighting that they are here in Tonga to listen to the needs of the people, as they are willing to help and promote the close ties of two countries.
The most critical thing is Australia listening to the priorities of the government and people of Tonga. So far I've heard some very strong messages about pandemic economic recovery, dealing with the impact of that, supporting the growth of tourism, for example, in Tonga is critical path forward. Also dealing with the increasing number of unfortunate natural disasters and humanitarian relief. So yesterday I took the Deputy Prime Minister and the Lord Speaker on a tour of the Australian Defence Vessel Reliant, which is our new disaster relief vessel, which is just one example of how we're partnering, because unfortunately disasters are becoming more common in the Pacific, and Tonga's on the front line of that. And Australia, as a proud member of the Pacific family, is committed to being there when it matters.
Australia has been quite active with their support towards the Pacific and Tonga, recently with the thought of why now? As why Australia is more committed now to foster its relationship with Tonga and the Pacific region.
Why now? Well, I think the operative phrase in that sentence is the new government. We have a new government. I come from the Labor Party, and we've got a very strong commitment to empowering the Pacific and very strong history of policies to support the Pacific, and it's something that we have a fundamental moral obligation to do. We're a member of the Pacific family, and that means helping other members of the family when they ask for help on things like economic development, on investing in the health and education of the people of Tonga, supporting gender empowerment, helping with infrastructure. We're committed to this. It's in our DNA, and it's something that we're proud to do.
Honourable Conroy has been in Tonga for just a 3-day visit and held meetings with the heads of governments. But there's an issue that most Tongans face when they wanted to continue with their studies in Australia regarding their tuition fees. Honourable Conroy says he will be looking at it, as the issue was first raised by the Tongan Prime Minister when they met earlier this year.
I recognise that this is a very significant issue in Tonga and throughout the Pacific. In fact, I first met the Tongan Prime Minister in would have been late June, and that was the first issue he raised with me. I know it's an issue. We've got the Australia Awards, which are scholarships to support study in Australia, but we recognise that there's a huge demand to do more, and look, it's something I'm really committed to looking at, and it's linked to the tremendous Tongan diaspora in Australia.
Honourable Conroy departed Tonga this afternoon back to Australia before continuing his trip around the Pacific, reaffirming Australia's support towards the Pacific family. The Australian Minister for International Development and the Pacific, Honourable Pat Conroy, presented Australian-funded hydrographic equipment to His Majesty's Armed Forces at the Masefield Naval Base, Tauliki. Waiwhanau Bola tells you more.
This is the first tranche of equipment under an agreed partnership between Australia and His Majesty's Armed Forces to rebuild Tonga's sovereign hydrographic capability. This partnership aims to strengthen His Majesty's Armed Forces' own national charting capabilities in order to better facilitate cruise ships and other large vessels for visit to Tonga and to conduct rapid environmental assessments in the aftermath of natural disasters. While in Tonga, the Honourable Minister for International Development and the Pacific and Minister for Defence Industry, Pat Conroy, was pleased to visit Masefield Naval Base and to present the critical equipment to His Majesty's Armed Forces. This includes geodetic equipment which helps situate survey vessels related to the environment and some components of onboard survey equipments. During the handover, the Minister highlighted Australia's commitment to supporting Pacific solutions to Pacific challenges. He added that investing in sovereign capabilities for Pacific nations is a key component of promoting regional resilience. Meanwhile, also present from His Majesty's Armed Forces to accept the equipment was Commander Holokaukaulakai, the Component Commander Navy and Director of Hydrography, with Captain Sioneu Lakai, the Deputy Chief of Defence Staff. High Commissioner Rachel Moore and Australia's Defence Advisor were also in attendance to facilitate the handover and the discussions between the Honourable Minister and the His Majesty's Armed Forces representatives. Waiwhanau Bola for Radio and Television Tonga News.
Despite the new wave of COVID-19 virus recorded in Tonga, the focus should not be diverted from non-communicable diseases or the non-communicable diseases NCDs, as it is still the #1 cause of death in Tonga. The concern was raised by the Ministry of Health's director as the festive season approaches. Alice Tupo tells you more.
The Health Director, Dr. Siale Akauola, says Tonga is now approaching the end of the year where there are feasts and programs involving food. As such, he urges people to be wise with what they consume in order to avoid non-communicable diseases. The concern is because the highest number of deaths recorded at Viola Hospital every year is from NCDs such as diabetes and high blood pressure. Dr. Akauola says Christmas is approaching and it is the time of the year when people indulge in unhealthy foods leading to non-communicable diseases. Dr. Gauola understands it is tough to control people from consumption of unhealthy foods, such as salty and sugary foods, as it is an individual choice. However, he hopes people will be more wise with the food they consume this upcoming festive season as a way to reduce NCDs in Tonga. Dr. Gauola is also concerned with the weather during this time of festivities on Christmas and New Year's and urges people to consume as much water and to stay hydrated always. Reporting for Radio and Television Tonga News, I'm Alice Tupo.
The number of domestic violence cases in Tonga is on the rise, according to the Women and Children's Crisis Centre. The centre records more women and children in Tonga are victims of domestic violence cases. More on that story with Alice Tupo again.
According to the director of a Women and Children Crisis Centre of Alikiliki says the victims of domestic violence nowadays are on a search, although only some are reported to the centre. As the office was established in 2009, the number of victims of domestic violence was about 9 to 10 per month, and in 2016 it was increased to 15 cases in a month. The last record from 2020 to 2021, the average rate was increased to 30 in a month, which are all new cases to appear at our office. Seeking help is increasing due to domestic violence at home or in any other places here in Tonga. According to information released from the Ministry of Internal Affairs, it shows that 36% of females in Tonga are victims of domestic violence who have reported to WCCC, according to the survey in 2019, and 59% are victims but they don't report it to Tonga Police or WCCC. Meanwhile, the director of Women and Children Crisis Centre of Alikiliki encouraged victims the importance of speaking out and sharing the problems that they are facing or coming in person to the office and reporting so they can work on it. Domestic violence is the same with physical abuse, mentally emotional, financial abuse, and other abuses to children or couples. In the meantime, Likeliki also says that they are trying with related stakeholders to minimize and end this problem, but they will face more challenges when WCCC do their responsibility. This includes when some people say that no one should be involved in a family's problems, especially married couples. The reason why is because some believe that people should leave problems of a family for them to solve, but Ofaligiliki clarified that their concern if the spouses have problems, it will affect the rest of the family, especially the children. Domestic issues happen in that family will continue affecting schools that their children are studying at as they make their own decisions for their lives and also decisions from their parents for their families living. If related stakeholders won't do anything to help in time, there will be huge problems happening to members of the family, like someone will die. In previous years, victims have died from domestic violence, and this is not new to Tonga. Despite this, the Women and the Children Crisis Centre hopes that families who face problems like domestic violence are able to share with a reliable person. The director of WCCC is concerned that victims should not discriminate, but have counseling or talk and share their problems. However, 16 days of activism started on the 25th of November and will end tomorrow, the 10th of December. Reporting for Radio and Television Tonga News, I'm Alice Tupo.
That is our local news now for the latest update from today's graduation ceremonies. From Tonga High School's graduation this afternoon, the guest of honor was Her Royal Highness Princess Pilolevu Tuita. She highlighted to students, teachers and parents the significance of making use of every opportunity given and also to be brave and courageous despite the challenges of life. She urged the students to put their faith in the Lord and let Him take the lead.
During her remarks, Her Royal Highness Princess Saalote Mafileo Pilolevu Tuita shared 2 short stories to encourage the students through their journey in the future. She highlighted the importance for every student to do their best in their studies and to be truthful along their journey.
Tonga High School students, May these two stories remind us of the significance of being truthful at all times in our dealing with others, and as we go to further our studies, to work or engage in business endeavors, do make good use of every opportunity you have, like the little ant.
Her Royal Highness also highlighted the significance for students to not be discouraged but to instead let God lead their paths. As such, Malia Latu Siosi tataki milangi mafi of Tava tu utolu kolomotua maufanga kolofo o Tongatapu apiko kai moeafi mooka o polata ane was announced Dux of Tonga High School for 2022. Mafi is also the head prefect of the school. During her speech, Mafi expressed her gratitude and excitement for her achievement this year, in which she acknowledged all the hard work of her teachers through this challenging year.
So it's time to say goodbye with some advice, dear students. Remember, we are never alone in any challenge or task we face or in any problems encountered. Trust the Lord. Make time to pray daily. Your parents and loved members are around you. Choose your friends wisely and have the courage to say no. Understand the social media and its trappings.
This is yet another historical achievement for the Muffy family, as Muffy's older sister was a Dux in 2013, while her brother was awarded Dux in 2017. Since this is the 75th Diamond Jubilee of Tonga High School, the Form 7 graduates have been dubbed the 75th Diamond Jubilee graduates. However, the Prime Minister, the Minister for Education and Training, Honorable Ho'akaw Meiliku, acknowledged the great achievements of this year's graduates and wished them well on their future studies.
The hard work and the sacrifices since the beginning of this year have been paid off with the tears of joy. It was the testimony from the Dux of Liahona High School this year, the young man from Hofoa, Fasimoeafi Atongi, Lofanga and the two newest, Finau Chapman at Nuku'alofa. Mark Ake reports.
The sweat and tears that were fallen, it's all wiped out today. This is part of the speech from the Dux of Liahona High School for 2022, Finau Chapman Nuku'alofa. Nuku'alofa is from Hofoa, Fasimoeafi Atongi, Lofanga and the two newest. There were 145 students graduating today together with other students from TVET. Finau Nuku'alofa, the Dux of Liahona High School, encouraged all graduates of the school that they need to keep running until they get to the finish line and never lose hope or give up.
This year has been the most difficult year, not only for me, but for all the students in the Kingdom of Tonga, especially the graduating class of 2022. We experienced a volcanic eruption in ash that disconnected us from our families overseas and the outside world. We finally caught up with the rest of the world and faced the COVID-19 pandemic as it entered our country and created a national lockdown. It's hard enough to come and go to school, but to have to school from home has many more challenges. Despite all of this, we know that our teachers sacrificed a lot to prepare home learning packets for us to study from home every week. During the first 3 weeks of home studying, I felt left out due to the new study environment. I wanted to give up. There was so much stress not being able to get help from meeting teachers face-to-face in the classroom. At one point, I almost lost hope, and there were many tearful and sleepless nights.
At least 54 students from Form 7 successfully accomplished this year's academic year, and they were studying at the foundation level of the University of the South Pacific. 2 graduates received 80% with honor awards, 5 graduates with 90% with high honor awards, and 4 graduates received more than 90% with academic excellence.
That is your local news, a sports news with Mark Ake after this break.
The stage is set for the Tongatapu Rugby Union Grand Final between the Marist and Hule tomorrow afternoon at the Te Whaiva Stadium. After a challenging year of COVID-19 and the Hunga Tonga Hunghapa eruption and tsunami, organizers were able to resume preparations for the annual tournament, although it was a bit later in the year than usual. Last Saturday, the Marist recorded an upset semi-final win over last year's finalist, Tolo Old Boys, 9 points to 7, while the Hule from Nuku'alofa defeated the defending champions Kolomotua in the other semi by 23 points to 21. This means tomorrow will be a grand final without last year's top 2 teams. The acting chairperson of the Tongatapu Rugby Union Committee, Malua Fisifalekaono, said that this year's semi-finalists were the same top 4 teams last year. However, last year's losers made it to the finals. He added that Nuku'alofa is one of the most popular rugby clubs and were top competitors back then before dying out until a recent revival which has seen the team in the top 8 in the past 3 competitions. He says that the Marists are always one of the top teams every year and the finals isn't a new landscape for them. Tomorrow, the third place playoff for the bottom 8 teams will kick off at 10 a.m., which will see Fasmoyafia Tungi square off against the Havelu Bulldogs. Afterwards, the bottom 8 final will take place between Toako Ma'afu and the Ha'atihu Spartans. At 1 p.m., the third place playoff for the top 8 teams will take place, which will be between the Kolomotua Eagles and the Toloa Old Boys. And finally, at 3 p.m., the Maris will face the Hule for the championship. Falekaono said that he predicts that more teams will compete in the competition next year as the TRU works to reform the structure to gain the trust of World Rugby and Oceania Rugby. He says this restructuring will help empower youth and rugby locally and produce more opportunities, not just in Tongatapu but in the outer islands as well. He also urges the public to make their way to Te Whaiva tomorrow to support their teams.
Now, before we part, here is a final look at tonight's top stories. Few COVID-19 cases recorded as Tonga is facing its third wave of COVID-19. Health Director urges people to be more cautious with food and the weather during the festive season. And Australia announced $73 million aid to Tonga this year alone. That wraps up this hour's news package with Radio and Television Tonga News for tonight. Have a